to the SP1200, the blue light bulb, to the board, the engineer's hands, and the limited well of patience. Hallelujah to everybody say ho, amen to all the ladies say ow. Thank God for make money, money, make money, money, and bless every hand that was ever put in the air. In your name, we pray. Some ideas, they shake you out of your sleep like when a toddler creeps. Totality of the deep, the mere thought of an unconscious manifestation carried out with the beat. Positive charged protons creating neural explosions. Time hiccups when fingers and pads touch. Dead air smiles because it knows what's coming. The countenance of the clock claps hands. The choreography of the knot slaps jams. And you be like, who made this? Vertebrae responding to the call so bad to make a B-girl curve the wall.
Hello, everyone. You are tuned in to Beautifully Uncomfortable, this is our second episode. This series seeks to address and bring awareness to trying and uncomfortable topics with the aim of trying to create more safer spaces in hip hop. And we have some guests joining us this evening, another esteemed panel of guests. I'd like to introduce our first couple of guests that we have with us this evening, or we have three guests joining us right now, Mana, Vi-Cee, and Tyrone Norris, aka Mental Stamina. So Mana, why don't you introduce yourself first and tell our viewers who you are?
Hello, everybody. I am Mana. I am a bilingual rapper. I rap in English and Farsi. Born and raised in Maryland area, but I've recently moved to the Utah area, and since then I've founded Hip Hop Organics, where we do live streams every Friday. Before the pandemic, we were throwing live shows, and hopefully once everyone gets vaccinated, we can throw shows again. And yeah, I'm just a hip hop curator, all that good stuff.
Yes, I'm going to add to that because, Mana, you also have the double asset of being a tech innovator. And I wonder if you might share a little bit about that too.
Yes, I'm a software engineer. Currently, I work at Western Governors University. But yeah, I'm a programmer, and I like to help with, a lot of nonprofits. There's Girls Who Code that I've helped teach other women how to code. I tell people, I'm like, look, if you can keep up with like your friend's dating life, you can code, you can program, I swear. So yeah, if women in tech,
for anyone to do it, huh?
Yeah, anyone can do it. I personally was at first I didn't think it was something that was possible. Shout out to Mental Stamina for helping me realize that it was possible. And yeah, anyone can do it. It's definitely not as complicated as people think. And there are so many different fields within it. People think it's like one thing. It's like, no, there's so many different roles that you can play in that world that I encourage everyone to at least give it a try.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. I hope that people will take you up on that effort to try and join your classes and get tutored on how to code. Make that a thing. Vi-Cee, tell us a little bit about yourself. I'm
Vi-Cee. Thank you for first of all, thank you for having me. Thanks for Words, Beats, and Life, and Flex for inviting me to this panel and these esteemed hip hop scholars and software engineers and all that, entrepreneurs, all that kind of stuff. I've been in the DC hip hop scene since 1990, 91. I'm kind of, I've been in and out. I've been an educator in the DC area for 21 years, 13 years in Prince George's County Public Schools. And now I'm the new chair of the history department at Georgetown Day School in Tinleytown in Washington, D.C. So I performed all throughout the city and State of the Union, U Street corridor, all that stuff. So I'm just happy to be here and lend my insight where I can.
A cornerstone institutions in this community for sure. Yes, thank you so much for bringing your expertise and sharing that with us tonight. I'm gonna toss this to Mental Stamina, also another architect on the scene here. I think you may be muted.
Sorry.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Sorry. My computer froze for a second, so I completely missed everything for like 10 seconds. But yeah, I go by Mental Stamina. Some people know me as Tyrone Norris. Some people know me as Isaac Smash 'em Off. Others, Johnny Appleseed, King Midas, Prometheus. It just depends on from where you know me. But yeah, I'm a rapper. I'm a software engineer. Right now, I'm currently focused on starting a ecosystem of cryptocurrencies. I've managed over 50 artists. I've rocked hundreds of stages, put thousands of artists on my stages. Yeah, I'm just a link in the chain, behind the scenes, So it is what it is.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm glad that you mentioned too. I feel like there's such an emphasis on Black financial tech right now, and Black and brown people basically getting introduced to the concepts of finance and learning now with NFTs being now sort of introduced newly in hip hop, but obviously with blockchain. Can you tell us a little bit about, I know you shared an overview on it, but can you share some of the other programs? I know you have some educational programs that are seeking to sort of educate us on all of those things.
I mean, I'm always each one teach one. So as far as education, I'm always offering to just, put people on. But at the end of the day, Google and YouTube are the ultimate teachers. So I just try to help people to understand that if they want to learn how to build an app, all they got to do is go to Google and go to YouTube and go, how do I build an app? And it's all there, and just follow that path. So I'm big on trying to put, people of color or women into the field of coding and cryptocurrency, because at the end of the day, a lot of people don't really understand that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency is nothing but code. You can just click a button and it's code. So all of that, that's why I'm very bullish on all of that, just because I'm huge on code, So I definitely want to be in the conversation of the whole Black financial tech situation. I plan to put the blockchain in a headlock. Yeah, low key. Just to be, I want to be the center of hip hop when it comes to the blockchain. So give me 3 years. Well, actually 3 months.
I'm going to give that to you, because I know it's going to happen, because I know when you put your mind to something, greatness comes. So I'm looking forward to that. So this conversation, we're talking about marginalized voices, especially when it comes to hip hop and marginalized communities, and wondered if you all could sort of start. And Mana, I'll start with you. I'll go in a little bit of round robin, but talk to me about what safe spaces look like in hip hop culture from your perspective as you've experienced it. And I think maybe before I start, last time we gave a definition of what a safe space was, and this is according to Merriam-Webster, a place or environment in which a person or category of people can feel confident that they will not be exposed to discrimination, criticism, harassment, or any other emotional or physical harm. So do you feel that it's a place that hip hop been a vehicle for that? And what do those safe spaces look like for you?
Hip hop is definitely a lot of that for me, because hip hop in general has taught me how to use my voice. And, in terms of like physical locations, I'm going to shout out Musai House. Back in the day, that was like one of my favorite places. I used to be like, this is my meditation. I would go there and freestyle, and I felt safe, and people pass the mic, but at the same, I don't know. A part of me is like, okay. A part of me is like, I got comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like, I would be nervous, but we were talking earlier about when you're in ciphers and there's a lot of guys, and learning to be like, you know what? No, like I need to grab the mic. And asking for it and pushing for myself, like standing up for myself. And that's what hip hop taught me to do, because whether it's in hip hop or in tech or in life, a lot of times women don't stand up for themselves, or their voices aren't heard. And making sure that I push myself to get my voice heard, and understanding that if I don't, then I won't get my voice heard. Yeah. I feel like there are in every city there are hip hop exists, and finding people who are passionate about it and coming together, that's really my safe space of like, okay, are you passionate about this? All right, then let's cipher, let's freestyle. We all got to sharpen our swords and make sure our lyrics are on point. So by being able to have other people around me that feel the same way, that's my safe space. And it could be outside in the parking lot, or it can be anywhere. But just being around other passionate folks who are willing to be vulnerable, because when you freestyle, you mess up, you might say something silly.
Yep.
But just being okay with that, being like, it's okay, this is not gonna be my best 16, but I'm gonna do it anyways, and putting myself out there. So yeah, safe space is kind of a theory more than a place. It's like being around the right people who aren't gonna criticize you or put you down for trying. And yeah, that's pretty much my safe space. I was like, wherever there are rappers or passionate folks who are willing to participate.
Yeah. I'll come back and ask you an aside question later about sort of the geographic context to that versus, being here in this area versus in Utah, and what that looks like from your perspective now, as sort of now on the side of leadership in that space, and which are, how you are now curating those spaces. But let me go to Vi-Cee and ask you, since you mentioned so many of these sort of cultural cornerstones here, especially in our area, that were oftentimes an incubator for so much of our local base and now global artists, right? So share with me what safe spaces in hip hop look like for you.
This is a super complex question. So hip hop was the ultimate safe space for global urban youth. That's what it started off as. And you can look at the catalog of songs that talk about the outdoor parties, plugging up into the lampposts, and it was the ultimate safe space for urban youth. And when I came of age, I came of age with the what they call the crack epidemic that hit all major cities, DC being one of them. And in that cultural milieu, you had go-go music had the city on fire at that particular time. And I was from Prince George's County, right outside the city. But something about hip hop caught my soul, caught my spirit. And so it was, where can a quirky dude that's not really into go-go but like the music, where can I find a space to express my artistic self? And so that space ended up becoming U Street. That space ended up becoming, to name something, the State of the Union. So to be able to walk into a spot and people automatically get you, to be able to walk in and spit some of the types of rhymes that I like to spit, and people grabbing you and saying, "Yo, that was fresh," that was like that was self-affirming. It was like something, because I don't know where all the other panelists grew up. Go-go had such a hold on the city, and if you weren't kind of like into the go-go scene, then you kind of, especially in high school, traditional comprehensive high school, you kind of was like an outsider, kind of. So finding my tribe of people who were into the particular style of hip hop that I was into, that was like a breath of fresh air. So that's just one slice of it. That's just one slice of me thinking about hip hop as a safe space. It allowed me to sum up, so I don't take up too much air. It affirmed my artistic aesthetic. Those spaces in DC, State of the Union, Bohemian Caverns, and I'm missing a couple of spots, but yeah, that's what hip hop meant for me coming up.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you for giving sort of taking this conversation into an even more evolved place now, about sort of all of the context around what safe even means and generally. spaces and not just as it relates here. So thank you for sharing that historic background for us too. And mental stamina, I want to pass it to you too. I feel like we're calling you that now. Like I should be, I'm used to calling you Tyrone, but so you have to tell me what you want me to call you during this podcast. But hopefully share a little bit, because you also have a lot. I mean, as a manager, being tutoring artists through this, mentoring artists through this, curating a lot of events in this area, and how you've sort of always, I felt like we've always been trying to focus on equity and equality. So tell us a little bit from your perspective what safe spaces look like for you.
Well, as far as mental stamina, that's, I've been mental stamina since 1998. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So as far as people call me Tyrone Norris, is people who kind of approaching it on the I'm trying to do business with you type situation. So that's a more formal situation. So it just depends on how you're trying to approach me, whether you're calling me stamina or Tyrone.
Yeah.
And as far as safe spaces, I'm more so connected with my man V was just saying, because, for me, like, I came up with hip hop. It wasn't like when I was in high school, we wasn't rapping. Like I found rap on the internet, because, it was go-go. It wasn't like everybody was in a band. It wasn't no rapping spaces for me. I didn't really encounter that until the 2000s. And so even though when I did encounter that, like I didn't come like, oh, this is a safe space for me. Like I walked in the ciphers like, all right, like who's swinging first? I'm not, I was always on guard, and I approached it like that. That's probably why my reception was probably even different. But like, I didn't know this was like the kumbaya thing. And even if it was, like, I was never received like that. It was never like I walked up and everybody was like, oh, you my homie, you my homie. It was always like, what the fuck is this nigga saying? And I was always on my own type shit. So I never got the safe spaces. I never expected the safe spaces. The only time I encountered safe spaces is when I started curating my own events and I created safe spaces. Once I became a curator and I was doing things for other people, then it was like, I'll create a safe space. But as far as on an artistic level, I didn't even need a safe space, just because I liked going into ciphers where, one, I ain't know anybody, where two, it was like I was perceived as a threat, or it felt threatening, because when that adrenaline's pumping, you rapping differently. Like I'm still go to ciphers where I be at the ciphers and half the motherfuckers at the ciphers might throw something, might swing. So it's like, yeah, like I love that type of energy in the cipher. So for me, I don't need a safe space in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Like hip hop is like that space where I'm safe walking down the street. Like I don't need to be safe in hip hop. Hip hop is when I'm letting the fucking gorillas out of this shit. You know what I'm saying? That's when I'm beating on my chest, when I can really be at, So it's just it's no like. And when I walk into a space when it's not safe, I try to maybe make it safe. But when I walk into a space when it is safe, I probably try to make it unsafe or more unstable. You know what I'm saying? But that's just the balance of it all. So it's just about for what people need. I feel like, when you're dealing with children in hip hop, you're dealing with women in hip hop, you need safe spaces. When you're dealing with fucking, gorillas trying to see who's the king of the mountain out here, it's no room for safe spaces. Because at the reality of this, there ain't no safe spaces.
Right. Well, everything you said, I've experienced myself personally. I feel like that is definitely, even from the go-go background, my uncle played with Chuck Brown for 25, 30 years. So go-go was just the accepted, genetic thing that you inherited. And I feel like hip hop was never safe because of that, because you would be beat up or you would get jumped if you did not listen to go-go. And you chose hip hop, especially something that was considered to be a New York art form. Even if you didn't listen to New York people, if you listened to Scarface, nowhere near New York, but there was still that. So I'm glad you brought in even the local context to this conversation as well.
You said it right with Scarface, because in the 90s, it wasn't, it wasn't Biggie and Tupac for real. It was Scarface and Master P for real.
Yeah. Yes.
For real.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But sorry, tangent. But
no. I'm glad you said that, because I want to talk, thinking about those two artists and the fact that I feel like those artists brought something to sort of this regional, right, perspective of hip hop. I mean, every artist sort of highlighted region. Hip hop has always been very regional, but there is a sense of like taking it from what is considered to be the place of origin, and then bringing it to these other spaces. And both of those artists developed a whole pipeline of artists behind them, many of which were, they had a lot of equitable sort of talent in their roster. So I wanted to sort of talk about that too, in terms of how you see sort of the gender balance in hip hop, from a regional perspective, from, a local perspective, but also nationally and globally. Mana, let's start again with you.
My headphones died, so I'm gonna be using. Hopefully, it won't be the sound.
So let me see if I can hear your mic up a little bit.
Can I still hear you guys?
That's
okay,
better.
there we go. Yeah, sorry. My headphones was like battery critical. Anyways, I live in Utah right now, and I've been living there the past 4 years. And of course, I went out there for a coding boot camp. But as I am anywhere I go, I'm like, where's the hip hop? I got to find the hip hop scene. And surely I did find it. And I found out very quickly that there are not that many females in hip hop, shocker, in that area. But as I've been there now it's been 4 years, I've definitely found many talented artists out there. Shout out to Phoenix the Child. And there's just there are talented female artists that really aren't getting picked up like that, or, a lot of them are shy or don't have a safe space. And there are so many dope female artists out there. I'm not really sure what the question was.
Sorry, you're headed in the right direction, actually. So just speaking from experience, you're in pro with this. Just sort of talking about gender balance, and I got a definition of balance, but I don't think you need that. But just talking about like representation on both sides, on all sides of whether or not you think there's an equal or proper sort of amount or of balance in the culture.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely isn't. There definitely isn't. Even finding, like, when I started to throw shows in Salt Lake City, I didn't know that I was the first female to throw a hip hop show in Salt Lake. And that it wasn't even like an intentional thing. I wasn't like, oh, like I want to be that first female. Like, it wasn't even like that. It was just like, oh, you know what? I've, have experience throwing shows, and of course I'm gonna do it here. Now that I'm here, I'm gonna do it here. So there definitely is an imbalance. But not only that, it is a lot harder for a lot of women to get involved, because you have that aspect of sexuality. And I'm sure every female rapper can tell you many, many stories about how they wanted to work with someone, and instead of working with them, it became about something else. And that makes them not want to do it, because they're like, okay, if I want to work with a producer, then the intention might be something else or whatnot. I mean, there is the both sides of that. I have been very blessed to know many men who have helped me, who have really stuck with the goal of getting music done, and saw my vision of being like, look, like, we're here to make music, and that's all this is about, and had that respect. So big shout out to, my point is that there are men who do respect the boundaries, but I also understand that other side of a lot of men who don't respect the boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
Even I remember when I first started in the hip hop scene, someone looked me dead in the eye and said, female rappers don't last, and I was like, I'm a female rapper, right? Like, you're telling me that I'm not gonna last. And I think that's kind of my stubborn way. I was like, I'll be that like 80-year-old grandma rapping in a open mic. I don't care. Like, I'm gonna continue doing this just to show that female rappers do last. And I see it. Like, I see how, like, a lot of men, they will invest in one another. That's another thing. I feel like the capital being passed down to men is like it's a bigger tradition of like, oh, okay, like, yeah, let me put $1,000 behind you. Let me put 5Gs behind you. Like, it's nothing. But when it comes to female rappers and wanting to put money behind that, then it's like, oh, like there's a lot more questions, a lot more, stipulations to being invested in. And it's like, no, dude, I'm just trying to make music. Like that's
Yeah.
it.
I feel like you said a whole word there, because it's sort of like, it sounds like a microcosm of what we see just globally. The women's entrepreneurs are less invested in, there's less capital, access to capital, all of those sorts of things. So do you think that that balance, just considering sort of the last year that we've had in 2020, 2021, where there has definitely been sort of a growing contingent of women, from Doja Cat to Nicki to Megan now, and Cardi and all these other women. How do you feel sort of, it seems to be sort of a narrow representation, I'll say, of women who rap. Rhapsody, you've got so many, but there doesn't seem to be as much breadth. Do you feel that is, how is that? How do you feel about that?
So, I mean, I feel like it's definitely getting better. It's definitely getting better, 100%. But as I was talking to my friend about this, it's like the oppression of women is thousands of years. It's it's not even hundreds of years, thousands of years. So we are moving away. This is like the beginning of the upward trend, and we're at that beginning, which I think is beautiful, and I'm so grateful to be alive in this time and age, because what my grandmas had to go through was extremely different than what I'm going through. And so I do believe that it's getting better. I do believe that spaces are starting to kind of open up a little bit, but women are still sex cells. I have not, people always are like, oh, you probably don't like Cardi B. I'm like, I love Cardi B. Like, play her music. I'll be jamming,
Yep.
For me, it's not about putting down another woman, right? It's about allowing someone who's not like that to exist. So
Right.
that's what I say. It's like, look, I'm totally like, I love stripper girls. Like, yes, honey, get it. I'm totally
Right.
cool with it. But if I don't want to do that, am I allowed to exist? And
Right.
that's the question that I like to ask people.
The diversity of voices. You don't have to suppress one to amplify another. I love that idea. I wish that more people would do that.
Yes.
Vi-Cee, I'm going to ask, there was a question here specifically for you on why you think the fair distribution of women in hip hop has been so lackluster, historically, or yeah.
I'm gonna build on what Mana just said. Like, when we talking about the exclusion, oppression of women, I'm gonna build upon her comment because it was a great comment. We're talking about, at least in modern civilization, we're talking about 10 to 12,000 years of oppression since Homo sapiens sapiens have evolved or transitioned from the hunting and gathering lifestyle to the agricultural lifestyle, which put a more hierarchical structure into society based upon the work of agriculture. In case you don't know, you live in an agricultural society right now because everything is built upon what farmers and how much access you have to grain. So my point in saying that is, it's kind of, since hip hop is one of the newer cultural forms, even though it's been around for 45 plus years. In this current iteration, we can talk about a big history of hip hop in another comment. But when we're talking about something that has been around, the oppression of women, I mean, has been around for tens of thousands of years, it's kind of, and I don't want to be controversial, but it's kind of unfair to ask hip hop, the entity of hip hop, the people who comprise hip hop, to supersede what has been already programmed by what I'll call mother culture. And I think that's where the balance, the imbalance of women participating in hip hop in any way that can be highlighted. I think that's where that comes in. So essentially, and then it gets even more complex because what are we talking about when we say hip hop? We're talking about women artists who get deals, or women artists who get their records played, or women artists who get equitable treatment in ciphers, as in the folk kind of music. So I guess, what are we talking about? What are we talking about that? And in all of those spaces, and all the spaces that I've been in, there has been a gender imbalance. And I think we are seeing this renaissance now of women artists who represent different genres within hip hop, whether it's the sex sells genre, whether it's the lyrical genre, whether it's the eclectic genre. I mean, all you gotta do is go on Instagram and you can see all of these women who put their own flavor on hip hop. But
Yeah.
when we look at the long timeline of human cultural expression, it's slowly but surely making the turn. But I don't think we will see a proper balance in our lifetime.
Wow, that's interesting. I want to read a comment that a viewer submitted. Panama Jack says, I think at its core, hip hop is accepting of all walks of life who wants to MC, paint, dance, DJ, whatever, as long as you're on point. The more sinister forces at play come from the stakeholders who aren't invested in the culture, i.e., fans who don't understand the history and culture, corporations, those motivated by money, etc. Tyrone, I mean, with that in mind, I wonder if you would comment on this, and then maybe even think about the sort of like, from a perspective, again, as a curator, like what are your methods to even ensure that there's balance? How do you do that? How do people reach out appropriately? Because sending out a message, right, saying all women here, right, like that's not a good way to do that, or is it? So how do you approach that?
Can you ask the question, like fully the question one more time, so I know I'm answering the
Yes,
right
sure.
question?
One of the things was asked of you is, how do you sort of create balance of energy? And I'm asking from even an additional context around it, around like, as you're curating events, what's your methodology? What's the correct approach to actually create balance? What are the sort of mechanisms and ways that you can connect with women artists? Is it at the point of the event itself? Like, is it at the point your labels are actually talking to women? Is there a long time plan for it? What does that look like for you?
So me, I've always been a seeker of hip hop. So I'm a believer that you're supposed to dig for your music. Like, it's not supposed to be just, here's what it is, da 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 da. So I've always listened to a lot of women rappers. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's always been a thing of, there's not enough women in hip hop, and I've always been like, no, there's actually a lot. So at no point for me has there not been a lot of women in hip hop. Right now, there's a much more condensed voice, so it's a beautiful thing. But there's always been a lot of women in hip hop, and then when we're talking about the imbalance, it's like that's like asking about the imbalance in basketball and the genders. It's just because that there was an NBA for males. There was never an NBA for the women. So the men had more of an infrastructure or path that was built for them to win upon, and that was again built by the outside people who built the whole industry. Because for me, when I look at hip hop, when people are like, "Oh, this is a classic, this is a classic, this is a legend," my head is just like, no. Most of hip hop has been just the distribution of plastic. It's just been, y'all been pushing, a plastic company, and so it's like what we perceived as real has just been a fake thing of selling plastic. And so now that we're on the internet, we're actually going into a more real phase of hip hop, in my opinion. And so we're actually getting closer to where we're actually starting from the 0 point. You know what I'm saying? And so like we're actually about to start into the golden age of hip hop. We're not leaving the golden age of hip hop. And so for me, when it's like, as a curator of events, how do I approach it? So I used to, back in the day, I would try to make sure every event had at least one woman on it. And then after a certain point, then I even took it to a point where I had a series called Black Madonnas. and I was booking all local women who were rappers. And then one show, I booked 40 women on one show. I did 5 of these. And the most consistent thing I saw about that series, it was the largest percentage of no shows that I would ever have booking on the show. And so out of that 40 women I would book on one show, maybe 20 would show up. And so to address even Mana saying that women don't last in hip hop, I know that sounds offensive, but women don't last in hip hop. You know what I'm saying? And it's just me being real. If we actually looking at numbers and consistency and all of that, and that's where the weight separation, like women have families and do other stuff. It is what it is. But if we're looking at the real numbers, like my favorite female rapper is Rock. She got like a dozen albums out. It's women who's all around. But all I have to say is I started off trying to address it, where it's saying, hey, I'm gonna try to specifically put women on every show. Now when I do a show, I honestly don't do that effort anymore, because what I did find is that there's you can feed fish and you can teach fish. I went into this one conversation with all these women who were stand-up comics on Facebook, and they were just talking about how the stand-up comic industry doesn't allow them as women to get booked on shows. And I came into that thread and I'm just like, yo, it's 200 women all in the same region talking about how y'all aren't getting opportunities.
Yeah.
Why can't 1 or 2 of y'all actually throw the show, book 50 of y'all, and y'all all come together collectively, sell it out, and boom, like that. So for me, I don't like to really get into this whole situation of women are being oppressed in hip hop, because hip hop is really about getting it out the mud, because Black people are oppressed in hip hop and women are sexualized. Black people, we got to come in here and shoot everything up. You know what I'm saying? And so it's the same thing, but it's like, how do you play the game? Where are your advantages at? How do you da-da-da-da-da? You don't have to, I don't have to come in and be a gangster rapper. A woman doesn't have to come in and talk about her vagina. But at the same time, the opportunities are there for women to come in and really, it's like, where's the women that's putting together the Wu-Tang clans? Where's the Wu-Tang clans of women? You know what I'm saying? Where, you know what I'm saying? The closest thing, all of those types of things of saying that women aren't getting the opportunities. I just challenge women to create those opportunities and to put your life on the line, because the men out there are dying. The boys out there, they dying. You know what I'm saying? And so when you say it's not fair, it's just like, yo, that dude just literally lost his life and a couple more people about to lose. It's serious. And so it's just, how hard are you willing to go? That's how I look at hip hop.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, Tyrone. That was a really sort of visceral kind of remark around like what women are doing. But you did say, and I think, at least from my perspective, I noticed that, right, excavating what is below the surface is important, because there are a lot of women that have all of those things. There's women, I could name a million different groups that I know of that are very similar to that, but they just don't have the same amplification. And so it becomes a thing of like, what is amplified isn't always the thing that we, do people want to see a woman Wu-Tang, right? We think about we mentioned the WNBA, and the idea that, that it might be difficult to pay women in the WNBA the same price as men in the NBA, because just the televised rights are different. The endorsement deals look different. Networks are not willing to broadcast. Just WNBA games don't pull in as much revenue. So
but you got to understand that the NBA is created by men for men. And so situations created by men for men are never going to be equal to women. And so it just has to be that scenario where it's like the same way with Black people. We know we don't got no banks. It's like, yeah, we can sit around and wait for them to give us money. But at the same time, we know we got to go build our own Black banks, build our own Black Wall Streets. And then, they're going to come kill us when we do it. But we still got to do it. That's the same thing. That's how women got to approach hip hop. They really got to go out here and really get it out the mud and go harder than any of these men. It's not you got to go as hard as the men. The women got to go harder. Yeah. And it is a desire for that out there.
I'm sorry. Oh, you want to move to the next question? That's fine.
No, no, I wanted to read a few comments and then please do interject. I just was
Okay.
there was a comment about there was a lot of women rappers in the 90s, and I heard that a lot. And then DJ One Love is commenting in Twitch saying it depends on if I assume female artists want to be successful in mainstream media. But Vi-Cee, please go ahead and interject what your comments were.
And I'll just circle back around to what I said previously. Like, this is a super complex question, because just like I believe you said, DJ One Love said, it depends on what you want to use hip hop for. Like, so, and not to get into the weeds too much, like somebody may just be, you know, a rapper or MC, a DJ, a painter, or into design for themselves, for their own edification. But if we're talking about industries, if we're talking about getting paid for artwork, and I don't think we can get around the idea that women have been oppressed, because hip hop doesn't exist in a vacuum in civilization. Hip hop was created because of certain civilizational aspects that were happening at a particular time and space. Like, hip hop was created at a particular time and space because certain things were happening. I don't want to get too far off of what we're talking about. So we can't excuse the treatment of women inside of hip hop, because that's how it's a microcosm of how women are treated in broader societies. Like, we got, I don't need to get into the examples, but and it is a testament. And I'm with my brother Mental, who's saying that they got to work harder, but it is a testament to. I told my students this. Let's take it out of hip hop. Let's take it out of the emotional context. And let's just say, I tell my students this all the time. Let's just say a young lady right now who has a 4.0 GPA and she wants to be a doctor. All right. But she also wants to have a family. At some point, she's going to have to make that choice. She's going to have to make a choice on whether to stop and have her family or to continue on and to be a doctor in this particular country with our educational system. She's not a full doctor until she's 30. And that's just hitting every point, every mark correctly. 4.0s, med school, residency. 30 is when you are a full-fledged doctor. All right. But we know, well, you know, you should know that biologically speaking, by the time women hit 30, that proverbial biological clock is ticking. So let's just switch that to a woman who wants to be a hip hop artist. So these systems that are in place do not put that particular aspect of womanhood on display. So women have to make decisions. Do they go on the 50 city tour, or do they stop and have a family? And if you stop and have a family, then you lose your clout or your traction because you got a new hit song and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think we can excuse hip hop for not creating those systems. And I'm with Mental. Like, I think it's men and women who have to create systems to ensure that women have equity and access if they want to get remunerated for their art form in any way they want to.
Let's consider this one like perspective maybe. What if being oppressed in society is beneficial in hip hop? Okay, let's say I'm telling a story. So because I'm being oppressed, let's consider it being like the blues. Because Black people were so oppressed, the blues was ours. Now let's put that in hip hop. Because Black people are so oppressed, we are the voice of hip hop. Now, if women are truly as oppressed as they are, I'm acknowledging women are probably oppressed more than even a race. If they really vocalize that, and if they really understand the philosophy of hip hop and really what that means, and women really connect with that and channel that, they are the voice of hip hop. And so for me, it's like that oppression is not something that holds women back. That oppression is the pressure that's going to make that volcano erupt. You know what I'm saying? And so when women are moving like that, it's over.
I feel you. I can't take your stance, because, and just this is my my perspective, I have never, this has never happened to me. I have never spit a rhyme or did something out in the world and somebody said, yo, I want to work with you. Come to my studio. This has happened over and over again. Come to my studio. Let's do some work. I have never felt that their invitation to do work with me was of a sexual nature. I've never
You
felt
know
that.
what? If I ever felt like that, and if I was in a scenario where that was a constant thing with me, you know who would probably be the #1 selling artist around, because I would chest that motherfucker. Because in that whole scenario, what it is a supply and demand thing. When you are the demand and there's one supply and the demand, all you're doing is increasing the
Until
demand for your
something
supply.
violent
You
happens
don't
to
have to
you,
put
and
yourself in that
then
scenario.
Yeah,
Fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah.
But again, with this rap shit, again, if it's a male rapper, how many male rappers get killed this month? You know what I'm saying? So I get these hypothetical scenarios of, yes, a violent thing can happen to a woman in hip hop, but yes, men are still da 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 da. So all I'm saying is, not saying it's an equal trade or nothing, but all I'm saying is, where there's risk, there is reward. And so when you learn to kind of balance
agreed.
and mitigate that, there's this area where some people can win. Everybody's not built to handle that, but some people can take that little bit of stuff and have a couple guys on their line, and now you got a graphic designer, a videographer, you got a whole street team. That's how these pretty women blow up real quick, because they able to manipulate. You don't gotta have sex with nobody.
Well,
But
now you, I want to make space for Mana. I think she wanted to get it.
I mean, I feel like there's a lot of assumptions, and we can assume we don't know. We don't know what's happening behind closed doors in any situation. But of course, life is not fair. I don't think anyone living. Maybe some people think life is fair if you're, whatever. If you're super
I do.
privileged. But I don't think life is fair. I think there's kids that are starving or live in war-ridden cities, and I don't think that's fair. Like, I got to not live be born into a life where I don't have to deal with war. Who's to say what's fair? But I mean, I do understand. Of course, it's like survival of the fittest. If you want to talk about Darwin, like, of course, like and when people ask me as a woman, like, do you feel like you're disadvantaged? And a lot of times the answer is no, because I do have people have told me I'm aggressive. and it's funny because, I mean, I don't know if they would say the same thing about a man. If they were out there and fighting for their dreams, would they call them aggressive, or do they call me aggressive because I'm not willing to back down for what I want? But these are all, I think, well, there's a lot of valid points that were said. Definitely, I have a whole thing where I'm like, yes, like, women, we should work together. We should be doing these things because we do need to create our own opportunities, and it's going to happen. And maybe it won't happen for me, but I will definitely, sure as hell, work extremely hard so that the next generation of women have an easier time. And putting my money where my mouth is, of investing in a young female rapper trying to come up and who doesn't know what to do or doesn't have the means to create her own albums or put a marketing team together or whatever. I do think a lot of the responsibility does fall on us, and understanding that you have power in this situation is really important, because we are our writers of our own destiny. So
Right.
if you really want something, like, do keep going for it. If someone is being sexual with you, call them out. There are so many ways of combating these things, but I also see the other side, because sexual abuse is a real thing. What is it? Some ridiculous number, like 80% of women have been sexually abused by the time they're 30. Like, 80%. That means 8 out of the 10 women are guaranteed to have had to deal with that. And that causes PTSD and all types of other things. And they may not even want to work with people. One of the I did and have done before is take a man with me. I usually don't go alone because, just to nip things out of, get it out of the way. It's like, it's not going to happen. But it kind of sucks that I have to think that way, but it's like, I don't know. There, of course, you can fight through it. You can, like someone like Snow the Product. She is amazing, talented. Has so many fans and like millions of views, and is doing it independently even. So of course, these things are possible, but it's like, how do you make it so that people are encouraged to do it? I do think that hip hop is a great reflection of our society. Yeah. So like Vi-Cee was saying, like, why do we expect hip hop to be different than the rest of society? When it comes to business, when you go to the Forbes list, it's like 5% of women who are, no, I'm sorry, I think it's like 3% of women who are CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, only 3%. So why do we expect hip hop to be so different than the rest of society? But, you know, and these are things that we have to continue to work on, talk about, and make sure we continue to work with each other and support one another so that we can see the change that we want.
Thank you, Mana, for sharing that. I wanted to bring this next comment on screen, and then let's read and think about. Trini James said, I think that men need to help bring more women to the forefront, put them on the platforms, the albums, support and amplify their albums. Sadly, we need the validation of men because this is a patriarchal society. This isn't just in hip hop. This is across all industries. And that really goes against, I think, Tyrone and Vi-Cee. So I want to hear your comments, but let's look at this next one from Panama Jack, where we need to look at the end game. What do we consider success? If success is defined by what's saleable, then capitalism is going to dictate what's successful. And unfortunately, sex sells to the masses. If success is defined by artistic integrity, then the answer to bringing more women into the culture is reestablishing the bars for greatness. Inclusion will naturally follow. I truly believe that. So we could, I mean, sort of, I feel like without going in a circle around some of the comments around like men now having to shoulder this responsibility that I think you both have pushed back on a little bit, but then the commenter sort of asking that question around that or sort of posing that as a statement. Did you, either of the two of you, have a chime in on that particular comment?
I agree wholeheartedly. I don't have any pushback on that at all. But I will say, like, and you know, we try to solve the world's problems in an hour or hour and a half panel. Mm-hmm. But I will say it depends on. I think a lot of times we focus on the person in front of the camera. I'll just say from my experience, women have been involved in hip hop for me on the back end because that's where they wanted to be. Women are some of the most tenacious negotiators. I've had experience with women being some of the most tenacious negotiators of all time. Like I would say that as long as there's that men or whoever create space for women to occupy other things than in front of the mic or whatever, that's also being a part of the culture as well. So this is such a complex issue. Like, are we strictly talking about women who are in front, who are the artists, or women who provide the support and ecosystem for other artists to go? Because in my experience, women have been some of the greatest supporters, and I don't mean that in a backhanded way. I mean, like negotiating contracts, looking over stuff, and just like, oh no, you don't want them to do that. You want, no, why is he doing this? Why is he doing that? No, we're not doing any of that. Like, so that's the way women have been to me in my career. And so I think we need to open up the space as well, because some women don't want to be in front of the camera, but want to be a part of the culture and the industry and all that kind of stuff. And if we go back in history, it was, a woman who, put the first hip hop group on, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, so.
And I believe women are the most, they spend the most money on hip hop as well.
So if women spend the most money on hip hop, right? How could anyone ever say that women rappers shouldn't be bigger than male rappers? So for me, it's the whole thing. Like, I feel like whenever I talk about this, I'm kind of viewed as chauvinistic, because when you're not really hearing what I'm saying, it sounds like I'm being chauvinistic. But when you really hear what the fuck I'm saying, I'm actually empowering women. But like, I've managed over a dozen different women. My manager now is a woman. You know what I'm saying? And what I did see from managing women versus managing men is women give themselves a ceiling. And I can't say that's for everyone, but most women that I've worked with, they give themselves a ceiling, whereas everybody has a ceiling. But for me, I found that it's easier to kind of break away that male ceiling and let that ego kind of soar. Whereas the woman, it becomes a fight with themselves. And so all that to say is, should men usher in women? I was telling you about the Black Madonna's showcase I had. And I remember one of the last ones I threw, this chick came to me and she was just like, I appreciate you put me on these shows, but can you in the future don't put me on a show with all these bitches? And it was like this self-hating kind of thing of like, yo, why you got me on this show with all these women? Like, now I'm lesser because I'm around all of these women. It's not a real show. It's a women's show. And it's like, but the crowd to those shows, the crowd to came to those all women rap shows they were more excited than the people coming to an all male rap show. And so when I threw an all women show, the performers were really unhappy. They were really hard to work with. The crowd was really, really happy for it. So the money is there. The demand for it was there. But when it came to the supply, the actual artists who were supplying it, they did not deliver. And not only did they not deliver, they weren't trying to deliver at 5,000%. Like the artists, like when I met like Logic or Fat Trail or certain artists, when they're like before they're known, you already saw in their head they were already gone. Like Fat Trail he was like, yeah, I'm the best rapper in DC. He said that to me at a point where I laughed initially when he said that. Then a year later, I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying. Now, you gotta have that cockiness. And so should men be ushering it in for women? Yes, anything that I know, I'm gonna share with the woman. But at the end of the day, I learned that I can make showcases for women all day, but because I'm not a woman, it's a disconnect there. And so I try to even help other women be in positions where they can lead those showcases, because it's going to take women to usher in women. It's not going to take men to usher in women. And so the problem with women in hip hop is women in hip hop are either trying to play a man's game or they're waiting for men to save them. And the only solution for women in hip hop is to go harder than men and just ignore men in hip hop. Women have to take over hip hop. They shouldn't be trying to share hip hop with men. They should try to come and really just snatch the ball and say, this is our hip hop. We spend more money on hip hop than anybody else. So this is our hip hop. Why are we considered the minority in hip hop if we're spending all the money? And so when women take it and shift it, that's what I always try to teach when I'm working with a woman as an artist that I'm managing. I try to show her that, no, you are God. This is your space. Don't come in here feeling like a lesser, because if you feel like a lesser, you're going to maneuver like a lesser. If you actually do the math, you actually see you have an advantage over every man in the game, and you can make more money than any male rapper off break, especially if you white. Especially if you're a not black woman. I'm not even gonna get that, but give me a Jewish white girl. Let me show you how to run them numbers up. But anyways.
No, Tyrone, I'm glad that you are sharing openly about. I mean, the whole point of this is right conversation, and some of these comments, while they may seem disruptive or from, like you said, from a place of chauvinism, I think it's important to surface all the different types of voices and opinions out there. I know there was a question for Vi-Cee about who was the woman that put the first hip hop group and who was the group.
I was referring to Sylvia Robinson. That may be a controversial opinion, but I was referring to Sylvia Robinson. So, and Sugar Hill Gang. So I know that's a controversial opinion, but you know what I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we could talk about that off screen if you don't believe Sugar Hill Gang is the first or whatever. I know I understand all of the context around that, but that's who I was referring to.
So you basically said Sylvia Robinson is like the Eve to hip hop.
I don't know about
she's the first that did them dirty, right? Like,
I had to mute my mic to laugh for a second there. Yes, I think some funny comment, but listen, it's definitely there. I mean, we're getting into some saucy places around. We keep sort of, and Tyrone, thank you for surfacing this around like women being more taking ownership and control and reversing sort of those sort of psychological, political components and being able to say, you know, be resistant and resilient in this space. And I always feel like there's some issues around, right, the sort of psychology of oppression and, you know, control and violence, as Mana talked about, trauma that comes from that, all the negative outcomes that make it hard oftentimes from that. Not everybody's built in that way, that they are resilient and that they can overcome sort of the masters of oppression. So in systemic processes and structures are often harder to accomplish when you're a small number. And there isn't always sort of a major one. But I just saw somebody put another comment, so I want to put that Words Beats in Life. And the first party was thrown by DJ Kool Herc's sister. So some more trivia, but I would love to continue on this conversation and ask another question. I think that might be interesting around. So does anyone have a theory on what would be the first step to sort of, and Tyrone, you've surfaced a lot of these sort of suggestions about in a very disruptive way around how to do this. But what kind of solutions or thoughts do you have around how we might make these systems and structures and challenge the hierarchies that exist in rap music to make it more equitable? And that anyone can answer that.
I got solutions for days for everything, I think. So, but so just so to let me compartmentalize what you said. You said how do we financially ask the question one more time?
Yes, hold on one second. I will read the full. So does anyone have a theory on what would be the first step to balancing the energy scales? So that I relate to whether that's men and women in hip hop, but also what type of solutions around challenging the hierarchies that exist in music and in society. I mean, if you think about that, we're a microcosm of a larger culture.
Well, I would say touch back on what V said earlier of saying like looking at the larger scale, right? And so if we're trying to change the roles of what there is in the future, right? Let's say if I wanted to make hip hop more positive, because hip hop was specifically, you know, kind of the gangster rap thing was kind of pushed with NWA, da 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 da. But all I'm saying is, it's that's also because it's easy to violence sales, that sex, money, violence. It's certain things that are exciting. Like if I'm watching a movie, I'm watching an action movie. I'm not watching people read a book in the movie. And so it's certain things that trigger people as exciting. And then there's also certain archetypes that the industry has created and says these are the paths to success. And so we have it's not saying that people don't like gangster rap music, but we have way more gangster rap out there because there's a path that shows that this can lead towards success. And so what we have to do is that's why I've always loved the record industry dying. The internet allows us to kind of carve our own paths. And so we're not relying on people to have the paths. Like the whole thing is like right now, walking those paths of that had to exist for a record label is stupid now. You don't have to walk those paths anymore. And so understanding that and freeing your mind from that. And then as we start creating and carving new paths, it makes new lanes for freedom. And so the way to fix that, yes, you introduce this to younger audiences with more of a freedom of these aren't the only paths. And the only way they can see that freedom is to see that other paths can lead to either financial success or different types of success. And so for me, like, you know, I don't really like the things that most people rap about. I don't really rap about those things for the most part. But I also don't see myself on a path specifically for that success. But at the same time, when you look at a world where it's like NFTs, cryptocurrency, social media, crowdfunding, I can take whatever I want to be true to myself and keep all of my integrity, but build it in a way where I can monetize it. And so when people start seeing artists actually be independent artists and actually doing what they want to do and being successful, then it'll make more passion. So really what it requires is, one, more women to really come out, take music seriously, but not just doing those same old sexual archetype pathways, and carve new things. Be creative, be innovative, and that will every time somebody comes out and does something new and something different, it clears the way for other people to kind of just follow behind. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of guys come out and do like the Aesop Rocks or the MC Paul Barmers or the Micah Nines. We need women to be the Sa Rocks and you snow the products, and to carve those paths. And the more paths we have that are completely further away from what we're used to, the wider our language and vocabulary and spectrum will be for the future.
Vi-Cee and Mana, Mana, you are unmuted, so please chime in.
Well, when you said the theory, and of course, definitely what you want out of it, your hip hop career, it makes a huge difference on which pathway you're going to go. But if you want to be a touring artist, that you don't need to be at the level as if you don't want to be at the level of Cardi B, but you want to be able to survive. I mean, I think the number one thing is capital. Money. There are so many female artists that I'm sure even Mental Stamina, he put me on to artists like E-Turn, or, there's just so many dope female rappers out there. Prowess. I mean, you yourself have been in the game for, I'm sure, probably, I think over a decade, and myself, like, there are so many female rappers who are committed, who are showing up, and who have constantly, they've been in the game, man. But having that capital and that financial security to be able to pursue your dream full time is something that nothing else can replace. Because if you have to work full time to do other things to make your ends meet, and you got to make sure you got rent and you eat and stuff like that, it's tough. So I think the biggest thing will be capital, and making capital available to women who already are taking it seriously and have proven that year after year after year. And I think that is number one thing. If you know a female artist, and I will say, like, shout out to crowdfunding, because I had a show in Houston a couple of years back, and I was like, I can't go paying out of my own pocket. So I asked my fans, I was like, look, I needed like $500 for, a flight and maybe some food or something. And I asked folks for that money, and they totally gave it to me. So, there are many ways of getting your resources out there and learning, how to collect the finances that you need. But it is the number one determinant on whether you can even be able to continue creating, because if you have to work full time, it's going to be really tough to stay creative and have that energy to stay creative, have the energy to go to shows and continue doing what you do. But I do believe there are so many female rappers who have proven that this is what they do, this is their love, and they're going to continue doing it whether or not they make money from it. And there is one thing of making money, and there's the other of, can it sustain you? Because you can make $100 here, $100 there, but that's not going to pay your rent. That's not going to be enough for you to actually survive. So I definitely believe that some kind of capital, maybe there can be, I don't know if a loan is a good way to look at it. I don't know if, and I'm not sure that's something that I'm enjoying this conversation, because I would like to think about this some more for myself and how I can gain more capital so that I could pursue it, full time. And, but yeah, I do believe there is a lot of women who are doing this just you know, in every city, like Kenilworth Katrina, someone out here, Jay Mills. Like there's so many dope rappers right here in the DMV that have been doing it since I've been rapping, and that I got into the game kind of late. I got into it when I was 23, when I just started, and I know there are women who, you know, started from way younger and are still doing it. So paying attention to them and seeing the people who are constantly out there and have not given up and won't give up, and putting money behind them. Shout out to Grind too. Grind is from out here, she's excellent. Uptown Shane. There's so many dope rappers right here in the DMV that you can support that have been continuously doing this for like a decade, over a decade.
Monica, and Vi-Cee, before you respond, I just wanted to share a stat, because Mana has been talking about, I mean, considering that there's a financial sort of tech background in this chat, that there are recently Goldman Sachs sort of decided that they were going to, which is a financial giant, invest $10 billion in to narrow opportunity gaps, contribute to the advancement of racial equity. But one of the things that they're putting that money into is Black women, women of color, not just Black women, but women of color, in terms of their, you know, earn less money than men in the workforce. And also, as Mana's saying, get less access to capital. But it's really sobering that I just saw a stat that 2.2% is the share that women have of the $130 billion given out in venture capital. And that was a $1 billion improvement over the prior year of 2019. So just thinking about the fact that those are VC dollars, but obviously that is how most businesses are founded in the early startup, and businesses being able to access capital. So those businesses that are women owned or women led already are at a disadvantage. So just adding that stat there. And then Vi-Cee, please comment on this.
All right. So once again, a complex question. I'm going to try to take a slice out of it and do the best I can. I think the fundamental question for any artist at any gender is, do you want somebody to be the patron of your art, or do you want to be the patron of your own art? And so that's a big decision, because if you want somebody else to be the patron of your art, then you're going to have to do the songs and dances that they like to see done, unless you find that space and where they're comfortable giving you that patronage and allowing you the creative control to do what you want to do. I think people need to, and I think Mental was talking about this, and Mana. I think people need to be in a position to be the patrons of their own art. So then you keep total control over everything you want to do, and that, you know, that's it's hard to do. And there are many ways to be the patron of your own art. You can be a software engineer, and because I'm a teacher, I know software engineers, they get paid a couple dollars, and you can take your couple dollars and put it in your art, and now you can do whatever the hell you want to do with your art, and go forth and prosper. So that's one half of it. But you're like, what do we need? And I'm gonna be a teacher right here. I think we just need kindness. I think my theory would be, we need kindness. In these spaces in which we know there are marginalized groups, I just think we need to be kind to each other. I think we're seeing, you know, with the recent slaying in Georgia, with all the stuff that's coming to bubble up in our society right now, I think every individual person in every individual space just needs to practice kindness. And when you practice kindness and sort of using that concept of paying it forward, it comes back to you. I've been a benefactor of the kindness that I paid to somebody, and I have been giving kindness because somebody else was giving kindness. So I think if we can just start there, then we'll see some of these inequities inside of the broader culture, and specifically inside of hip hop culture, sort of dissipate.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. I love the sentiment of that. It is certainly aspirational, but that is a golden rule, as they say. What you give out comes back to you. That's certainly a place to start. especially in the world that we are in today. And I wonder, just kind of thinking about that a little bit in terms of where we are in the midst of this sort of global pandemic, how do you think that has shifted? Because they're certainly exposed that there are more vulnerabilities that oppressed people. And Tyrone, you talked about a little bit about, well, if women are oppressed, sort of being able to take ownership of that power and be able to deliver it. And that's sort of what seems to be deconstructing a lot of these systems right now, right? Like you think about crypto and blockchain and how that has sort of revolutionized finance and financial tech and the banking industry, because people just demanded that this was what we were going to do, right? We were going to continue that crypto coin was going to continue to expand. So is there any suggestions in thinking about like what women can do, or other people during this time in the middle of a global pandemic that might accelerate, or do you think that might have pushed us back? The fact that we're kind of all stuck in one place.
Can you hear me? Am I muted?
You're unmuted.
I'm unmuted. Okay, good. Sorry, my computer's a little frozen. What my homeboy Kamon, I was watching one of his live streams, and he said something saying that this is the revolution right now. It's like everybody else is waiting, for this pandemic to be over. This is the revolution. Are you gonna wait through the revolution? So no. And then when the pandemic and stuff, like I always joke and say like I created the pandemic, because everything that I talk about and that I have been talking about for about the last 10, 20 years, and people are like, Ty, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense, maybe, da 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 da. All of these things where in my head it was like this hypothetical scenarios where I knew what I was talking about made the most sense. Now the whole world has been forced into this Tyrone simulation where y'all got to play my game. And so it's like everybody wearing masks and sitting at home on the internet now. And I'm just like, welcome to my world. Like, and so it's like, this is like the best time for me. Like, I'm loving Corona. So it's like, if people are waiting through this, I'm gonna exit out of Corona a millionaire. So I'm gonna make 7 figures before I get the vaccine, probably. I don't know, but this is not the hiatus. This is not anybody's slumber period. If anything, this is a incubation period. So this is the incubation period for the monsters, for the giants, for the people who have been waiting for this time to feed us. So whoever you are, whether it's women, if women want to, if you look at, people like Megan Thee Stallion, Cardi B, this is really one of the times where women have caused the most disruption in hip hop. If you look at this Corona period, like a lot of things, this is the disruption time. So anything can happen in this phase. So take advantage of this. And I really appreciate Prowess, you using the word disruptive to kind of describe me, because disruptive that's everything in my philosophy is disruption. That's why I'm going to work so well with cryptocurrency and the blockchain, because disruptive technology kind of echoes my voice. And so if we were talking about this on Facebook right now, you'd be calling me a troll because you wouldn't be able to understand the intricacies of what I'm saying, because it sounds like I'm joking, but I'm dead serious. I'm dead serious. And this stuff right now, this is the time to be excited for everybody. So if you're sitting around waiting for something to happen, keep waiting, because it's good chances that it will happen, because this is the time where something's going to happen. But if you are Prometheus, you want to bring the fire like me. If you're Johnny Appleseed out here planting these trees, if you're touching everything, turning it to gold like King Midas, this is the time. This is where your revolution is really going to go super saiyan. So, I'm excited. I want to see women win. Like I've been saying, women are going to come and shake up hip hop. So, people think I'm da 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 da, but I know that women are going to get to the point where it's like they'll have their own hip hop. Not only that, watch Africa. You want to see disruption in hip hop. Wait till Africa just goes, oh, this is African hip hop. We don't need y'all. It's a powerful thing when African people stop rapping like Jay-Z and Nas, and they start rapping in their own voice. So it's going to be a powerful thing when women stop portraying all of the masculinity and playing the male games of hip hop, and they really go, you know what? This is my hip hop, and I'm going to do it this way. And when they do it like that, that's really going to be the disruption, because they don't need men in hip hop. They don't need men to usher them in. They don't need to sell albums to men. They don't need to distribute anything. A woman never has to touch a man in any part of that cycle, and she can become a multi-millionaire and never even look or talk or smell a man. It's their choice to enter in and play that game the same way, black people want to get in the game and, shuck up to Uncle Sam. Uncle Tom. So it's like, women, you either go be out there and be a revolutionary or be a fucking Uncle Tom. That's how I look at women in hip hop. And so when they start asking for a handout or anything, it's go get it out the mud. Because when you get it out the mud, you're going to be a fucking giant. So that's all I'm about. Disrupt it all, everything. Set it on fire. We don't need none of it. Start it all over from the beginning.
Yes, I listen. I believe in disruption. When I was graduating Georgetown this year, our dean told everybody, break everything and break it as much as you can. And so, right, innovation, that's how you get innovative, is by dismantling everything. Just go break and you'll find a solution, right? So Mana
Rumi
and
says, ruin your reputation. Be notorious. Rumi, he says, be notorious, ruin your reputation. And I take that to heart. I ruin my reputation every chance I get. I don't care how they think. That's what it is.
Yes, who words of Rumi are, take everything that Rumi says to heart. Mana and Vi-Cee, I know we've got a few minutes. I would love to hear your comments about this topic.
I think, this is an interesting time that we live in. For sure, there's been a lot of people who have been creating a lot. And if you are creating right now, this is the time. You're stuck at home. Don't take it for granted, and keep creating and putting it out there. This pandemic had forced me to finally figure out how to put together a Shopify. And I know as a programmer, I should be creating all this from scratch, but time is limited. So, you use the tools that are available and learn about things. I finally got some merch for the first time I got merch in a very long time. And, it's up to you what you want to make of it. Cause I know a lot of people got me being a social butterfly, and I love talking to people and connecting with people. That's been my thing since I was a very young age. It was really tough for me at first. It was like, oh my God, like I'm not seeing people. It hit me hard. But then, after some time went by, I was like, okay, this is forcing me to be at home, to be in front of my computer. We started doing our live streams, and that's been awesome. Being able to freestyle live. We actually, interviewing artists from all over the country, all over the world. So, this is, like you said, this is a time for innovation. This conversation has definitely given me inspiration. I'm like, yes, I'm about to go disrupt the hell out of everything, it's fueling my fire for sure. But yeah, I mean, this is a time for you to, I feel like, a lot of people said Mother Nature kind of gave us a timeout and was like, go to your rooms and think about what you've done, which, it's like, yes, think about what you've done, but more what you want to do. What do you want out of life? Where do you want this to go? And how do you want to approach it? Because technology is definitely not going anywhere. I've been in conversations where technology or programming is compared to literacy. There was a time where, a lot of people weren't literate. Programming is kind of the same. Like, you should know. And again, we talked about this a little bit earlier. There's so many different things within development that you don't have to learn all the things, but just knowing a little bit here and there will exponentially give you a lot of an advantage in this industry in this time. So I think, it's up to the individual, and I hope people are working on themselves and keeping that good energy, being kind, because it's rough, like there is so much. The internet is a beautiful thing. It's one thing I think Mental Stamina said before, it's like a hammer, you know, like you can use it to put together a house or you can use it to kill someone. So it's up to you how you use that tool, and you can absolutely use it to your benefit. And as a female rapper, you know, there's so many online resources like SoundCloud or YouTube or Facebook or whatever. There's so many at this point. Clubhouse, like, I mean, the list goes on and on. So using those tools to benefit your music, to put yourself out there, to socialize, you know, you can do so many things. It's just really about disrupting and not being afraid or not letting your fears get the best of you. Because I mean, it happens to me, and I feel like it happens to most people. Our fears can get the best of us, and not allowing that. But, you know, this is a time you're forced to be in the house, so why not create? I feel like so many dope albums have dropped this year, and I'm thankful for the pandemic for allowing these things to happen. I mean, Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak making a group together. I was like, oh my God, the universe is blessing us all. Sarok dropped her album, you know, like, you know, there's just so many dope things that are coming out. So following suit, like, just be creative, you know, use your time wisely, because you're not going to get it back. And yeah, it can be, life is like what you make it, right? It's like, if you want to go for it and go for your dreams, you can. If you want to just sit home and binge watch Netflix, you can do that too.
And that's my jumping off point. That's my jumping off point, Mana. I think I'm gonna take a slightly contrarian view, because in this particular time, I just think people need to take care of themselves, self-care. And if that self-care means that you're not creating right now, you go right ahead and you don't create. And I also want to, you know, I've heard a lot about disrupting and disruption, and I think disruption is good, especially when the capitalist tentacles have their, you know, hands in a lot of things. But I will offer this caution that if you disrupt everything, everything will be disrupted. And so I don't think we put those types of things into context. It depends on what you mean by when you say disrupt everything, because a lot of what we're saying people can use to put themselves out there are created by these same systems which oppress people. So that's why it's a complex conversation. So, you know, the greatest distributor on the planet right now is Amazon. They also, you know, oppress their workers. So, I mean, are we disrupt? I mean, do you want to disrupt Amazon?
Simple solution, disrupt it. Yes, simple solution, disrupt it all. The thing is, you set everything on fire. The things that are fire resilient survive.
Yeah, I guess, but in the historical framework, that means you're going to lose. Anyway, you and I'll talk about that off camera.
It's worth losing it.
So my thing right now, if you want to create, if you're in that space, in your head space, you want to create, you go right ahead. And this is the time, as Mental said, and Mana, this is the time to sort of put your chess moves, put your chess pieces in play and do your thing. But don't feel bad or don't feel any type way if this is a time where you just need to binge watch Netflix, make sure your family and kids are good, make sure your grandma and grandpa is great, making sure if you're into the vaccine, you get in the vaccine, making sure your family is good. And then come back to it when you have the headspace to come back to it. Because especially if you're using your art for commerce, if you're using your art for therapy, then you know you do your therapy how you see fit. So that's why I'm at. Self-care, number one, and everything else will fall into place.
That's a beautiful, I feel like that is a great end note and cap note for today. Thank you all so much for bringing your ideas. Thank you for being open and candid and unabashed really with your commentary. Thank you so much for sharing your mind share. And if you want to get more of this programming, you've got to follow Words, Beats, and Life on TikTok and IG. and visit the WBL website. Words Beats and Life website is www.wblinc.org. It's on the screen scrolling. Subscribe to the newsletter. Stay abreast of the upcoming events. You don't want to miss a beat. So thank you all so much for joining us. And we'll have more notes and comments from our panelists. You'll be able to find them in comments and on the page. So thank you so much.
Picture this. Underneath the margins, your words can breathe. Got your listeners tilting isosceles the way you holding volcanic quills, spitting decrees. Better believe with flows like these, you got gills. Screaming at daffodils or dreaming in mandrills, derivative of skills. You're built in the workshop, rocking with Ra. Cause in life, the woodshed don't stop. It don't stop. It don't stop. Don't stop.